This is section 3.3. So now we're solving inequalities using multiplication and division. So the last section was with addition and subtraction, and now we're going to be using multiplication and division. So this is our objective. Now, what I'll tell you about this is still a lot of the same stuff as when we were just solving equations when it had the equal sign in it, except there's one little twist that happens when we're multiplying or dividing, and we'll get into that in a second. So with this diagram, if you feel like you want to put this in your notes, feel free to pause this and do it. If not, I'm going to show you what this diagram is basically talking about. Okay, so what I want you to think of is we got two numbers. We got A and B. Okay, whatever those numbers are, let's say they are 4 and 2. So 4 is greater than 2. This is saying if you multiply those numbers by another number, and if that number is greater than 0, so if you multiply it by a number like 5, a positive number, right? Greater than 0, positive. If you multiply both of them by that positive number, it stays the same. The symbol, the inequality, stays the same. So it started at greater than and it stays greater than. If we take 4 times 5, we get 20. And if we take 2 times 5, we get 10. So 20 is still greater than 10. And that's the same as if we started off less than, right? If it was 2 less than 4, it would stay the same. Here's why. When you take some number like -2 and you multiply it by 2, all it does is get further negative. And then when you take a positive number like 3 and multiply it by 2, it just gets further positive. Okay? And what that would happen too, like if we started off with here 3 and multiplied it by 2, if we started off with 2 and multiplied it by 2, it wouldn't catch up to the 6, so it would still stay less than. Now the tricky part is when C is less than 0. So when you multiply or divide, when you multiply by negative numbers, the sign switches. Okay? And so here's what happens. Let's use those same numbers, 4 and 2. 4 is greater than 2. If we multiply by -5, 4 times -5 is -20, and 2 times -5 is -10. Now, what happens there is this sign switched, and now -20 is less than 10. Here's why. If we start off with 3 being greater than 1, and we multiply them by -2, -1 goes just a little bit to the negative side because it's only 1, where 3 jumps a lot more to get to the -6. So it actually kind of leapfrogs, it hops over -2, and that means it's now less than where before it was greater than. We'll show you this in a few examples. Okay. So here we go. We start off with 3 greater than 1, and we're multiplying both sides by -2. Okay? So -2 times 3 is -6. -2 times 1 is -2. So you see what happened is since we multiplied by a negative number, this greater than symbol, oops, I shouldn't put that. That looks like an equal sign. This greater than symbol now switched to a less than symbol. Okay? So anytime you multiply by a negative number, you must switch the symbol. So let's try this. We have x divided by 3 times -2. So to solve this, we would multiply both sides by 3. These cancel. We are just left with x. -2 times 3 is -6. So now I'm going to ask you, should I switch the symbol or not? The answer is you should not, because we did not multiply by a negative. It was a +3. So the sign stays the same. Let's try this again. We have negative 3/4 W greater than or equal to 3. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, so that'd be 4 over negative 3, or you can think of it as negative 4 over 3. It doesn't really matter. It's 4 over negative 3. So these 4's cancel each other, the negative 3's cancel, and we're just left with W. 3 times 4 is 12. 12 divided by negative 3 is negative 4. What happens now is, because we multiplied by a negative, this sign switches. The equals stays there. That doesn't change anything, but it switches. Okay, one more. We have negative n divided by 3 less than negative 1. We multiply by, so right here, this is negative, basically this is negative 1/3. So I'm going to multiply by 3 over negative 1 or negative 3. It doesn't matter how you look at it. These cancel. The negatives cancel. We're just left with n. Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. Negative 3 divided by negative 1 is positive 3. And the symbol switches because we multiplied by a negative. All right. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that this works the exact same way with division. So, if you divide by some number, so if you have two numbers, A and B, and you divide by another number, C, if that number is positive, greater than 0, nothing changes. The signs stay the same, right? 6 is greater than 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 2 is still greater than 1. And that works for the less than as well. What does happen is if C is less than 0, so if it's negative, the sign switches just like it did for multiplication. So if we have 6 divided by 6 greater than 3, and 6 divided by 3 gives us negative 2, 3 divided by negative 3 is negative 1. Now, negative 2 is less than negative 1. So the sign switched from the original. And make sure you pay attention. This also goes with if they're equal to. Okay, we're going to hop over that and come back. So here we go. We have negative 9y less than or equal to 63. We would divide by negative 9. These cancel. We're just left with y. 63 divided by negative 9 is negative 7. And since we divided by negative 9, our sign will switch. So now we'll go back and we'll do this one real quick. So you walk the dogs in your neighborhood after school. You earn $4.50 per dog. How many dogs do you need to walk to earn at least $75? So we're going to say D is equal to the number of dogs walked. So you get $4.50 for each dog. And that, oops, getting ahead of myself, $4.50 per dog. And we want it to be at least. So what does at least mean? At least means 75 or greater. At least is 75. So greater than or equal to 75. So in this case, we're going to divide by 4.5. Divide both sides by 4.5. And you get D. 4.5 is not negative, so the sign stays the same. And D equals 16 and about 2/3. So if you think about that, you can't walk 2/3 of a dog. So you would obviously need to walk at least 17 dogs in order to make your $75. This is what we will be doing on your assignment. Write down any notes that you have, any questions that you have.